Good afternoon and welcome to Spokane Community College. My name is Jenny Martin. I'm the president of Spokane Community College, and I'm thrilled to welcome you here today for a special Chancellor's Town Hall. That's what we're calling this, a Town Hall, specifically in support of the budget and other things that might be coming up this wonderful spring quarter. Before we get started, I do want to share our native land acknowledgement. We are honored to acknowledge that the Spokane colleges and our main campuses for Spokane Falls and Spokane Community College are located on the traditional and sacred homelands of the Spokane tribe. We also provide services in a region that includes the traditional and sacred homelands of the Coeur d'Alene tribe, Confederated Tribes of the Colville Reservation, Kalispel tribe, and Nez Perce tribe. We pay our respect to tribal elders, both past and present, as well as to all Indigenous people today. This land holds their cultural DNA, and we are honored and grateful to be here on their traditional lands. We give thanks to the legacy of the original people and their descendants and pledge to honor their stewardship and values. I also want to acknowledge, I'm going to take just a second of your time, Chancellor Brockbank, but I also want to acknowledge and thank our Director of Tribal Relations, Dr. Naomi Bender, who recently sent an email to our Spokane Community College campus, and we'll get this out to the greater district Spokane colleges as well. We had some confusion around a pronunciation of one of our very important centers, our Inchalum Center, that is on tribal land, and we had a little bit of outcry from our campus that we were mispronouncing the name of the Inchalum Center. For years, we pronounced it Inchalium, and we were corrected a couple years ago by one of our tribal leaders from the Confederated Tribes of the Colville Reservation, but we didn't largely share that broadly with our campus community. So again, for clarification, Inchalum is the correct pronunciation, as reaffirmed by Dr. Bender in her role as our Director of Tribal Relations. And so we so appreciate her work with the tribes and the work that she's done for us so far. So with that, I will turn it over to Chancellor Brockbank and Melanie Rose for the Chancellor's Town Hall.
Thank you, President Martin. Thank you, everyone, for being here. We really appreciate it. The focus, as President Martin said, the focus of this is a special town hall, and it's special because we're providing a summary of the 2025 legislative session, along with an update about state funding and how it impacts our operating budget. So we're going to go through a fairly comprehensive summary, and then you'll have a chance to ask questions on this topic. We do have our regular town hall, spring quarter town hall, coming up at the end of May. So today we're really focused on legislative and budget. So, first question. The 2025 legislative session concluded on Sunday evening, April 27th, after, these are my words, a long, grueling session. What are your initial reactions to the outcomes?
My initial reactions to it were, it was a really not very fun experience, I think, for everybody. I actually really like this part of the job more than I thought I would. But this was really an unpleasant and challenging session for everybody involved. And I would say, regardless of party affiliation or whoever, whatever the strategy is for different folks, our legislators deserve a round of thanks for the work they put in. That was really not a fun session for them, and potentially not over yet. I would say the other thing too is that they're trying to cover a $13 billion budget shortfall. And they had some real challenges in doing that, especially with not being in alignment between the Senate and the House and the governor. And that's still a little bit in question as we go forward. So our locals worked super hard for us. We actually get bipartisan support all the time. So I've been kind of making it a task over the last week or so to thank all of them and make sure that they recognize that regardless of what the outcome is, things we like, things we don't like, we recognize the effort. They're people too, and you should see some of them there. They're physically haggard, and so I really appreciate that. The other part, I guess, was so we can start with the good part of bad news is we did lose resources in this, as we predicted, but not as much as we feared. The things that would keep us up at night and our real concerns about losing massive amounts of money did not really fully develop. We are going to be short some resources, and we'll talk about that in detail here a little bit later. But our legislators did a couple things for us that were pretty helpful, and I think put us in a position to be successful going forward. It's going to sting a little bit, but like I said, we looked at it. I think we're all like, that's okay. I guess we'll be fine. But still some work to be done there. So hard session, relatively good outcome for us, all things considered.
Awesome. So besides the budget, what are some of the most significant results of the session?
So a few things that I think were good moves by the legislature this year. Two of them are really local here too. One is that they did pass a bill that gives free tuition to tribal elders over the age of 55 for anybody who's an enrolled member of a tribe here in Washington. I think that's, in my opinion, a no-brainer. That's a lot of other states do that in recognition of traditional sacred homelands, and it's just a great gesture and actually deserve it. So that was great. I think the other thing that was really good for us is in the high school completion world, students have to be 19 years old or older. I'm looking at Sherry. Is it 19 and older or older than 19? It has to be 18. That age restriction was removed. And so that opens up the door to some students who are no longer in high school, are young adults and are ready to get started on that. They don't have to wait. And then the third thing is the Washington College Grant. It was changed so that some of the access requirements or eligibility requirements were made a little bit less stringent, so students have access to more money, which when we talk about the federal stuff, you'll understand that that's going to be more important as well. So some positive things for students going forward, not all budget related.
So talking about budget, what was our most significant budget related outcome?
So the one thing we talked about from the very, very beginning as being problematic was the fact that we were overfunded by OFM in the last two years. We tried, our number one priority with the legislature was for them to not pull back $28.6 million from the system this year. So we were overfunded by 28.6. OFM, the Office of Fiscal Management, said, we want that money back. And we went to the legislature and said, please fund us in the supplemental budget and don't take that back. So for us, that would have been $2.6 million. We'd have been responsible to pay back to the state by July 1st. And that issue went back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, and we finally did save that money. And that was a huge, huge win for us. In fact, that was kind of our one and only, please do this. And we're thankfully got it. So that was great. On a negative note, for many years, the way that COLAs were funded in higher education is they would say, hey, we'll fund 60% of it, and you fund the other 40% of it by raising tuition, which seems logical. We're generating more revenue. We use it for this specific purpose, but if you start calculating it out, it never was enough, and so the formula just wasn't logical. So in the last biennium, we fought it to the point where we got 100% COLAs funded at 100%. And that was a huge, huge victory for the state system, something I've been working on for a long time. Unfortunately, that was rolled back a little bit, and so this year, or in this biennium, COLAs are funded by the state at 79%, and we have to pay 21% of it. So that's a reduction for us as well. And actually, one of the things I want to say is this $2.6 million that we did not have to pay back this year, that actually turns into a reduction in the years going forward because we were funded at this level, and the 2.6 won't be there next year. So we're automatically at a $2.6 million reduction. Then the 21% for COLAs, that's the starting 2 points of reductions going forward. So, but that's sort of what we planned on when we were doing our budget planning.
So would you please walk us through the other significant budget impacts to Spokane colleges?
Yeah, so I got to get notes for this, right? So let's talk about compensation. One of the things that, actually this is a pretty significant part of the outcome as well, and this would be a negative for the faculty. Faculty COLAs have always been calculated on what's called I-732, and that's a factor that takes into account the inflationary index in King County. And at times, that index is a lot higher than the normal COLA. The legislature changed that to the implicit price deflator, which is a national measure. And so the COLA for faculty for the next biennium is 3% in fiscal year 26, 2.7% in fiscal year 27. And then for classified and non-represented staff, it's 3% in 26 and 2% in fiscal year 27. And so one thing I want to mention here too, because I've heard this a little bit, is just a reminder, classified staff have a contract that's negotiated with the governor before the session. And unfortunately, we don't have any part of that negotiation. That is prescribed to us, and your locals work with the state agencies to kind of help. I'm looking at Ward right now. And so that's part of your negotiating unit. If there's parts about the COLA that don't seem right, that's a union issue that has to be dealt with between the classified union and the governor. And so I just want to make sure everybody knows that's where that comes from. I talked about the split for the COLA. Here's some other reductions too. In addition to what I talked about earlier, the first two reductions, they also came back in the last minutes and reduced our overall general funding by 0.5%. So that's $6.1 million per year for the system. For us, typically 10% of that, another $600,000 is typically what we would get. And then in the capital minor works area, which minor works is what we use for repairs and upgrades and infrastructure work that we have to do to keep our buildings up to code. So the system lost $16 million in there, and we're not sure how that will affect us going forward. And then the other thing we have are what are called provisos. And those are special designations of money that come to us for things like the CDL training program, cybersecurity. We lost something in the healthcare opportunity grants, career launch enrollment funding, and we lost a few $1 million in that as well. That's still yet to be calculated. So that's kind of the general laundry list of items that we got started on.
Okay, so with all those budget adjustments, what's the bottom line for our collective organization?
You're not gonna like this answer, but I don't know. I just kind of gave you the big bullets right there, but there's a couple of things that keep that actual finite number and percentage as somewhat of a mystery as we continue going forward. Now, Linda McDermott, the business office, and the budgeting folks are working diligently on this, and we'll have those answers, but a couple things have happened with that budget that make it challenging. We just talked about all the different variables that go into it, and the state board has also now changed the way they hand us that money, and it's coming to us all as one big lump. So a bunch of things that we used to see as line items are now in one bucket. And so for us to see what money is coming on this line and from this proviso and from this proviso is a little bit more of a mystery. And so we can't tell where we have lost and gained yet. But the general thing I would say is what we've been predicting is we will probably in total have about a 3% to a 3.5% reduction in resources across the board. That's the exercise we did at district cabinet. And I think we have the tools and the ideas and the concepts sitting there that will allow us to make those adjustments without what I would call across the board damaging cuts. But there's more to it than that as we look into the future, which I think we'll get into in a second here.
So you talk about Spokane colleges having all the tools that we need to balance our budget. What are some of those tools? Yeah,
so I've shared some of this with you in an email before, and actually I want to make a comment about email. Having this town hall was done intentionally because email is tone deaf, singular explanation. It's really hard to do. So everything I say today, imagine what it would look like if I put it in one email. I'm saving you the trouble of that. It probably would take me a day and a half to write it. But so the specific things that we have in front of us, I'll give you some lines and some concepts that we have, but some of these things will be vague on purpose. And they're vague on purpose because there's information sharing and notification and planning that needs to happen in the different units. And those things that are sensitive or challenging, I think are best delivered by local supervisors and leadership. And I'm not going to talk about something here that could be misconstrued or taken in the wrong way. But we have done some things that I think are really thoughtful about our employees and thoughtful about our students and set us up in a way where we can manage this pretty easily. So, and that's a tribute to all of our leadership there. So a couple things, let's start what we're not gonna do. So we talked about these things along the way, but things we're not gonna do is there will be no furloughs. We talked about those being inequitable for different levels of pay. Those were not included in the legislative thing. We might talk about voluntary furloughs as a way to get some money out, but in general, it is not required. So changing wage compensation is not part of it. There's not gonna be any early retirement incentives. I think we've learned, in particular during the pandemic, you do not save money doing that. What happens is the people that take early retirement are the ones that you really want to keep around, and it just doesn't work out. You end up replacing and filling, and it just is not effective management. It's not a money saver. We will not have a hiring freeze. That's a standard thing for us to do during these times. And I'll tell you that part of the conversation that got us to the point where I'm saying no hiring freezes is other members of leadership saying if we have hiring freezes or hiring delays, then the first conversation we need to have is what work is not getting done or what individuals are going to have to carry that work. And I just have to give some credit to our leadership team who talks about the people all the time and the idea that hiring freezes don't affect anybody. It affects the people that have to pick up their extra work, right? And so we think we have the ability to not get into a hiring freeze situation at this time, and so we're not going to do that. Oh, and the other one I think is good too, this came out of some of the legislative work, is we will not have a tuition increase above the 3% that we have already approved with the board. One of the solutions in this legislature's budgets, I think this was in the House, was an additional tuition increase of 5%. And I think that would have been damaging to our perception at a point where it would not have been worth the cash, to be honest with you. You're passing that on to the students. You get this perception that our costs are way high, although it would not be an actual dollar number that would be real significant. It just looks like we're not taking care of our students. So I'm super happy there'll be no tuition increase. Some of the things we want to talk about as far as reducing expenditures is one of the ways we'll do that is current year underspend. So this is the first time you'll hear this, but stop spending money. And I'm jokingly saying that, but I'm kind of being serious. We get to this time of the year in your budgets where you think like, oh, I've got this amount of money left. If I don't spend it, it won't be there next time. We don't operate like that. We operate on setting budgets based on what you need. And if there are things this year that are not critical and not necessary, don't buy them. Hold on to it, save money. Any money we carry over from this year to next year softens our obligation to make changes in the years going forward. So, and you're not going to be penalized for saving money, or it's just not how we're going to operate. So that's one thing is current year expenditures. We're also going to talk about increasing or being a little bit more aggressive about our forecasts on enrollments and revenue. We are always pretty cautious about our estimates for how many students we'll have, how much tuition that'll generate, and to the point where we kind of often exceed it. So when we do that, what we're kind of doing is taking away the opportunity to have the spending authority for the actual amount of tuition we get. So, and that's a no cost, doesn't damage anybody way for us to move the budget around. Right? Other than we say like, hey, it's important for us to hit our goals and to make sure we're getting students in the door and helping them continue throughout the year. Another one like that is we will probably put into the budget an adjustment for vacancy savings. So we don't typically budget right now in a way that we account for the loss of an individual and the fact that it takes 2 months to get somebody back in their seat. The wages for those 2 months need to be captured and used as part of the general effort to get us balanced. But we have in the past have not done that as an institution. And we talked about that at the district level and saying, look, we're going to set a target for that, and that's going to be a shared goal. So, and I'll just tell you that honestly, you'll see more vacancy savings at the district level because of types of employees we have, which are almost exclusively classified and non-represented. Whereas at the two colleges, you have faculty who, you just don't see vacancy savings during the year. It just doesn't happen. Faculty are signed up for a year, they're there for the year. They don't leave. So that also is an easy adjustment for us. We're looking at reducing sites and leases. There's also the strategic investment pool that we created last year with the board that brings extra revenue in. We're going to transfer some costs to that, which takes away our ability to do creative and innovative things on the fly. But the most important thing right now is for us to be sustainable and use our revenue streams in a way that makes sure we are solid going forward. So we're going to put some costs in different places. And then the other thing we've talked about and recognized is we need to be far more diligent and scrutinize some of our spending. And some of the simple places I'll tell you where we're going to ask our leadership and directors and deans and supervisor level is to watch these things. One is meals. We spend a ton of money on meals. It's great to have food at different events, but it's not always necessary. And one of the things that we have all administrators meetings every month out of our office, we've already stopped the food purchases for that. And it just is, it's not a great thing, but it's also not a huge inconvenience to not have food every time we walk in the door. Out-of-state travel, not saying we won't do it, but also saying you don't need to be traveling out of state a bunch of different times. Some professional development is part of faculty contracts. There's professional development needs to happen and national things that we need to do. But we're also going to be a little bit more critical about the number of people we send and what we send them to. Sometimes we should and could say no to those things. We've been actually very lucky to be pretty liberal about travel and professional development for, frankly, the last 10 years at least. Couple of things, reductions in programming, personnel, and strategic scheduling. And I say that with the vaguest of vague terms I can give you. You shouldn't jump to any conclusions, but taking a look at what operations are important for us and strategic, and there will be a couple of changes there, but they're not the overwhelmingly big changes to our budget. And then the other thing we'll have is, I gave you a list in the last email I sent about the continued analysis of certain things that we see as not being managed effectively. Software purchases is one thing that comes to mind. I'm going to grab the list. Optimizing use of technology and software for routine tasks, optimization through scheduling, utilities and infrastructure savings, business processes, consolidations across the district, eliminating duplications across the district, and overall organizational structure and governance. And many of those things actually came out of the budget survey that I think the majority of you contributed to. So those are things that have been suggested to us. So what we do in the next week or two to balance the budget will only be the beginning of a year of us really continuing to look carefully at what we have in front of us. And I'll talk more about some of the risks in a minute here, but we will need to continue to assume that our revenue will not increase going forward. And I'll talk about all the little indicators that are problematic for us. But we need to continue to kind of sharpen our pencil every time we go in here and look at ways to be efficient and effective. So not just so we can pay the bills next year, so that we can pay the bills in 10 years. That's the kind of forethought we need to have given the current landscape of higher ed.
Thank you. What are the things we should consider risks going forward?
I didn't realize that was the next question. Could have just gone right into it.
I know you did. I like that.
When we finish up this first part about the state budget, we'll go into the federal budget. And there are some federal issues that are absolutely going to be challenges for us going forward. So I'll kind of hold that thought. But federal policies and actions, which include access to financial aid and risk sharing. The other thing we have on our plates is the state board and the president's group is working on the allocation model review. So the way we get money from the state goes through a filter and a process, and that's how we end up with our state allocation. It has to do with numerous things like head count and the number of weighted average enrollments we have, and Jenny, what else are we, there's a whole bunch of factors that go into it. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So minimum operating allocation that gives you like a straight, it would be 3.4 million off the bat. And so it's just kind of basically how do we pay for costs? So that's changing, and we often do not win when we recalculate on that thing. And then here's the other one. I think this is from the state budget is that I'm overly concerned about is revenue forecast going forward. The things that were put forward in this budget assume a lot about revenue increases over the next biennium. And I have to be honest, and this is only Kevin's opinion, could be totally wrong, could be right, but there are a couple things working against us. Our federal, the economy, not really unsure, as well as in order to balance the budget, the legislature put into action some other taxes that are pretty impactful. The B&O tax, there's a gas tax, there's, a couple other ones off the bat, but it's not super, a wealth tax, capital gains tax, that are not really friendly to businesses. So I don't know if we want to rely on the revenue forecast going forward. So when I said earlier, like, hey, we need to continue working for the whole year to kind of make ourselves more efficient, that is in preparation for the next biennium, where I think we're going to have an even tougher time than we did this time. I hope I'm dead wrong, but I don't think I am. I'm looking at President Martin and agrees. Hey, by the way, did you know that your chairs up here are Spokane Falls blue? Remember, if you don't need it, don't buy it. Maybe you can trade them or something for some green ones. So risk-wise, there are some things that we will, that we really need to pay attention to going forward.
So how will you share the final budget decisions and actions with the full district?
Yeah, so this is something that's important to me. All through the interview process in the last couple of years, I've talked about budget transparency. When we make final decisions and how we get to the targeted amount of 3% or 3.5%, the district will get a report which will outline all those costs with some sensitivity to, if it affects any individual or things like that. But you will get a single document that will show you the adjustments we made and how we made that balance out. I think it's important to have that out there and for there not to be any mystery about it, and where the money's coming from to pay for things in order for us to make the budget balanced. And then we can critique that as we want to, but we put a lot of thought into it as a leadership team, and I think you should see all of it. So that'll be public. I don't know how fast it will come out. It'll probably be in June by the time we wrap up all the details, but that's the plan.
Awesome. Thank you for all that. So what's next?
Okay, so on the state side and our local budget, the next thing is myself, the two presidents, and Linda McDermott will sit down with all of the suggestions and ideas we have on the table and start picking the things that we want to put in the final decisions to get to that final dollar amount. There's some parts of that still needed to be developed as the budget team pulls apart the allocation. So there's some uncertainty still about which pieces will fit and which pieces will make the difference for us. But we'll sit down and finalize that, and then it will go to the board, hopefully in May, maybe in June. The other part that I think is interesting, and you might hear plenty about, is the legislative part is officially not over yet. I think the governor has 15 days for the budget to sit on his desk, and then he can veto sections of it, or he can veto the whole thing, and then they have a special session, which would not be awesome at all, because then everything we just talked about is up for debate again. And frankly, I think everybody's worn out on it. But it's unusual for one political party to have majority or control all three branches there in this process and to have to come back for a special session. But he has been very clear that he does not like parts of the revenue package. And so there is a little push and pull going on there. And then I'm going to talk about this more at the end, but I've talked about it once before too, our vision going forward. So it's important for us to know going forward that despite the fact that we have some challenges here, and I can look down and forecast out and say, the challenges might get harder. The one thing you will not see from our college district and our colleges is for us to shrink into the corner, right? In order for us to be a strong, sustainable part of this community and to serve students and to take care of our employees, we need to be working at full speed. So we're going to double down on our exposure and our awareness in the community. We are going to work harder at our workforce development relationships and work with employers. We are going to continue to partner with our four-year institutions on the transfer stuff. The things that we have going right, we have a ton of great things going on that are overshadowed by this budget stuff. We are going to make sure that we are the strongest, most visible, and most important higher ed entity in this region. No question about it, because that is going to be important for us to be sustainable 10 years down the road. So this is not the moment to shrink away. This is a moment to kind of actually double down and get more aggressive. And that's what we plan on doing.
Awesome. Okay, shifting gears, what's happening at the federal level?
I don't want to talk about it.
I know. That's not...
No. There are some interesting things happening at the federal level and things that I would really, even if you're somebody who doesn't like to spend a lot of time watching this stuff, I would encourage you to watch what's happening in higher ed right now. So two things for us that are really important at a federal level. I think everybody's probably seen some version of the fact that in the Trump budget going forward, Head Start and early learning is eliminated. So we have already started the process of advocating and informing our congressional delegates about that, including on May, where's Brianne? Is it May 14th? Yeah, May 14th, Congressman Baumgartner's regional office will be visiting both campuses as well as Head Start sites to learn more about what we do, how Head Start fits into our role, and for us to have an opportunity to fully advocate for them. And I'm just gonna be specific here is, in this case, I know not everybody in the room probably agrees with some, well, how should I want to say this? Everybody's got a political perspective here. You might not agree with Congressman Baumgartner, might not agree with those sides. I don't care what side you're on. When we bring representatives to campus, my sole outcome, goal, desire is to educate them so they can advocate for us. And all the other things besides making them believe in Head Start don't mean anything to me that day. Nothing. I have to get advocates on our side in order to save that program. And that program, I'll say, this is only my perspective on it, but it's right. You know, if you talk to kindergarten teachers, they'll tell you they know when a Head Start student comes into their classroom because they're ready to learn, right? And I heard a story, maybe Melanie told me this, about a friend of hers who teaches kindergarten and this year started the year with 5 students who were not potty trained yet. Those were not those Head Start students are students who do not have access to resources, and their parents have voluntarily gotten into that program not only to help their student be ready to learn so that they can enjoy upward mobility, but that reliable childcare is also there for those parents who are also people who have faced adversity and need an opportunity to either come to us to upskill training-wise or frankly just to get out there on a daily basis and get to work. And if you take that away, you will take away the very beginning of the continuum of what is how to build a workforce. And if you want to talk about a great economy and a skilled workforce and how you build that, it's the people. So I feel I've had time to hang out with that group as I supervise Bobby in that group, and it does incredible things for people. It's not high cost and it's highly regulated, and it is a great return on our dollars. So I just feel strongly about that, and we're going to fight like crazy to keep that in our region. If you take it out of our region, it will hurt us in the workforce development environment. So that's going to be part of it going forward. Federal, I can't even remember what the question is now, but On to the next
What
thing.
else is happening? There's something else happening.
There is something else happening at the federal level, and it's happening, primarily it happened yesterday. So in the last legislative session in DC, there was a bill called the College Cost Reduction Act, which passed out of the Higher Ed and Workforce Committee, but stalled there. And there's a variety of things in there. And it came back up yesterday as part of budget reconciliation. So the committee worked this over in budget reconciliation, and I'm sure it will move out of there and be part of the final budget reconciliation package. And we have a lot of concerns about that. I've spent the last couple of days with on the phone, and texting, and doing everything I can to advocate for that with AACC, with Congressman Baumgartner's office, and he's on the committee. And we still have a bill that has some pieces to it, and I'm going to share some of the highlights with you. It's not actually as damaging to the community colleges as it would be for a high-priced four-year institution, but there's some things in here that are going to be really significant for us. So the first one, I'll just start off with the one that will really make you wonder, is it's what's called risk sharing. So I think what you hear from the federal administration right now is a concern about students leaving college with crippling debt into occupations that are not livable wage and don't, so you put somebody kind of at a disadvantage forever. And we probably all know somebody who's been in that situation. But what the proposal is, and I lack a few of the details, even though I read the bill this morning, is that an institution like ours, our institution, Melanie graduates from our institution. She's taken direct loans from financial aid office, and Melanie takes off, and a couple years later, she quits paying her loan. She defaults on it. We would then be responsible for a portion of said loan. We have to pay back, which is really, really challenging, and we're not funded to pay back loans, right? So the details of that are yet to be fully vetted, but the idea is that institutions need to get people completed. And actually there's a disclaimer in there, I think, is completions lessen or eliminate our responsibility for that. So we'll have to watch this closely. But the other things in there that are a little bit worrisome, and more so I think for the four-year institutions, are no longer having access to a Stafford loan for undergraduates, limits on Parent Plus loans, limits on unsubsidized loans, and some exclusion for some of those other direct loans for undergraduates. And so for us, we know that most of our students are Pell students, and about 17% nationally take some direct loans. So our direct loan number is small, and the penalty would not be as great, but we also don't have extra money to be paying off somebody's loan, right? So a couple things here. One is, if this passes, and you have to assume it will, we will have to really reevaluate how we work with students. And I'll just say, the guided pathways efforts around increasing completion were just training days for this. Because if it is fiscally linked, if student success is linked fiscally to our institution's viability, we have some work to do. And that'll be good for students, but it's a huge challenge. So there are some things in that bill, College Cost Reduction Act, and is now in budget reconciliation, that will absolutely change the face of higher education. So if you think about us, not that many direct loans, but if you think about Gonzaga, there's many, many students who do not have parents who can pay cash for that whole experience, who need those direct loans to finish those things out. And I think it's a fine argument to say we do not want people leaving college with crippling debt. I think we all believe that. But how do we make sure we still get them to the finish line in one way or another? So there's a lot left to be learned in that area, but the concepts are there, which are limiting some access. Here's the other one, I'm sorry. This is important for us. On Pell Part of what they're doing is trying to meet the requirement to reduce a budget shortfall in the Pell Grant budget of $90 billion. So any student who's less than part-time is not Pell eligible going forward. But at the same time, they're also opening up workforce Pell, which is for, it's like 150 to 600 hours of instruction would then be Pell eligible. So things in continuing ed would be eligible for some Pell stuff. So some push and pull there. And if we really look at it closely, there are some good concepts that we can work off of, but it will be a different world. And I'll say this as an encouraging thing. If we get into that space, all higher ed institutions are going to be in the same space. And that means we can compete. And one of the things I always makes me shake my head is if you watch a sporting event and somebody's like, well, you know, the field was terrible today. And I'm like, you just got beat by somebody who was playing on the same field as you. Well, the greens were too fast at Augusta. Everybody played the same greens. If we want to be competitive in our work, in our area, we have to take advantage of what the rules are and change it in a way that's good for our students and good for us going forward. I think it's an opportunity. I think we're probably better at that than most people around here. And it's probably an opportunity for us to gain and grow. We will look probably more attractive as far as price and resources than other institutions will. And I mentioned earlier the Washington College Grant. The one thing we have going for us is the state of Washington has so many different ways for students to pay for school outside of federal financial aid that there's going to be options. So I can ramble all day about that, but I'm going to.
Okay, I think we're through our questions that you wanted to talk about. So time to open it up. Jeff has his hand up.
Yes, we had a couple of questions come up online earlier, so I'll just kind of summarize them from the same person. One is, how are we ensuring that underserved and marginalized student populations are not disproportionately affected by the cuts? And then also, how will these cuts affect student services such as advising, tutoring, mental health, and disability support?
To my recollection, it will not impact directly those areas. Those are not kind of primary areas that we've looked at. And, you know, affecting students, marginalized students, just go back to our approach, which is this, is we expect, well, this is what I say, it's not written in the mission or anything, but I expect that what we're trying to do is make sure that every student who walks in the door walks across the stage. So when we make reductions or changes in expenditures, we talk all the time about what the impacts are. We talk about what the impacts are to our students. We talk about what the impacts are to our employees. We talk about what the impacts are to our community. Unfortunately, there's only about 15 people in the room when we do that, so not everybody gets to hear some of those in-depth conversations. But what I can tell you is that our group is conscientious of actions we take impact people, right? And so we hopefully never do something that damages somebody unknowingly. But we're just going to continue to look at that and say, look, we're trying to get everybody across the stage. Students walk in the door, and we need to give them the services they need to make that happen.
Great question.
Uh-oh, President Martin.
Oh.
This is just kind of a comment to go back with what the question was, but also to reinforce some of the things that Chancellor Brockbank said. It kind of sounds like there's like 4 of us go in a room and we're going to make all these decisions. And that's not the way that the budgets are built. And I do want to just talk a little bit about SEC because I have firsthand knowledge of that, but this is also duplicated, I know, at Spokane Falls and within the district units too. So the budgets are built for us through our deans and directors, working with our budget team to build what do we need to effectively support our students, serve our community, and we build those budgets. And then from there, those are reviewed by our VPs that are then brought into our leadership team, and we have some candid discussions about if we're going to be more efficient or if we have to make some cuts, what are some places we can do that while considering impacts on students, impacts on people, and where can we be more efficient as opposed to, again, cuts. We are making some cuts, and we had to make some very difficult decisions, including one for us this year was the decision to eliminate the PACE program. So that is a cut to our budget, it's a cut to our service in our community, and we had to weigh that out with the risks. So every conversation comes with, what is the risk to the institution? What is the risk to students? What is the risk to our employees? And what is the risk to our community? All of those things are considered. So it's not just like we found out what the amount is, we've reviewed the budget survey, and then here we are making cuts. It's far more than that, and far more people are involved in it, just not at the final stage when the final decisions have to be made.
Thanks, President Martin. That's a great way to explain it. The fact that if you don't hear something from us for 3 days doesn't mean we're not doing anything. We often do things that require us to be kind of consumed by some troubleshooting or communicating cross country, whatever it ends up being. But yeah, it's very participatory as best we can, but also respectful of changes and individuals, and trying not to create unfounded rumors at the same time. It's kind of a weird balance of transparency and confidentiality.
Okay, thank you. More questions?
Priya's got one.
I know Priya's got, but I think she wants to go last. Like that's her strategy.
All right, well, it's up to you.
What questions do the rest of you have? Yes.
I was just curious, with our new partnership that we're having with Spokane Public Schools, how will that benefit us financially and kind of help us weather this storm?
Yeah, so I'll let President Martin talk about it too, but I think, just to, as we get started, number one, it establishes us as the workforce high school partner technical epicenter for that training that happens in this region, and it'll be visible, and it will not only get more students on campus, but it'll get more students in programs like yours. I mean, those pathways, to have a student who could be here for a first couple of years, oriented and familiar with this, and I think about ABE when we talk about this too, where we get students on campus for a certain amount of time and they get familiar with what they're doing, and it's thinking like, that should be the gateway for them to be in our programs. And so I think it's an enrollment booster. It's gonna help us with partnerships. Frankly, it will help us with the foundation and donations. It's a transformational thing that shows our commitment to our K-12 system as well as the workforce development in this region.
That's well said. I mean, I think the pipeline for students, for sure, having them on campus and be able to interact with our faculty and our programs in a more robust way, seeing themselves as college students immediately from the second they enter high school, I think is a really important piece of this. I think there's some fundraising and foundational type things that will get us in the community. We'll get some more exposure there. The investment in facilities that are close or in proximity to our campus, I think, is really important to our campus footprint and to the external view of our campus. So I think those are all things. And then the pool, I get this question. Actually, it's like a question that someone submitted for our all-college meeting. If there's investment in our pool, that, again, brings back a space back to life that would not only support the public school students, but our community and our campus as well. So they have some investment in resources that they would be putting into our campus in proximity to our campus that will benefit us, as well as the pipeline, and then just the community support and the community outreach we've already received by people who might want to invest in us longer term, knowing about this community endeavor together.
Great answer. Thank you. I think Guillermo has a question.
Along those lines, oftentimes with budgets, the duality of K-12 pitted against higher education. Did you get that sense in the legislature? Sometimes when there's a finite amount of money, they say, oh, well, we gave K-12 more money, so therefore we had to give higher education less. Did you find that? And in my unique role, I also get to hear a little bit of that.
not quite the way you described it. There's not like we won't give you that money because we're giving it to K-12. We do run afoul of K-12 every once in a while. I'm just going to say this outright. The superintendent of OSBI, Chris Reichdahl, was previously a lobbyist for the state board, and there have been times when he has, I think, not been a supportive partner, and times like kind of fighting running START and some of the changes we made there. So we sometimes run afoul of one particular issue that would benefit one and hurt the other. But for the most part, we're frankly great partners with the superintendents in our region and all kind of on the same page. And really, they don't do that kind of trade this for that at the legislative level. If they do, they're doing it behind closed doors and we don't see it. So.
Okay, more questions? Thanks for that one, Guillermo. Jeff, anybody online? Nope. Oh, Priya. Oh,
Okay.
I can't see. It's so bright up
Way
there.
back here.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
I remember last year, Dr. Brackmank, you told us about the investment account that
Yeah.
we were able to start, and I think that was because we had a lot in reserves. Are we looking at utilizing any reserve or investment account for any of these shortfalls or
Yeah.
to help supplement?
Yeah, we do have some things that we are looking at. Is there's two things we've done. In some cases, we've zeroed out, so in my office, I really travel and any of those other things, I zeroed that number out, and I'm going to use local funds that are carryover to pay for that, with the expectation that I have to figure out how to change budgets somewhere else over the course of the year to make that right. So yes, it does what I kind of talked about numerous times before, which is it gives us the ability to handle some temporary disruptions that other colleges, frankly, have no space for at all. So we're in a better position to handle and solve problems in a way where we can spend the time being strategic and really thinking it through, where I know other colleges right now are having fire sales. And so while this is not a great news day, I can tell you I'm not panicking. I don't think President Martin's panicking. I know President Messina's not panicking. We're going to be in a position to handle it, and some of those extra funds are ways we do that. So those become our safety net and our way to take a risk. Like, for example, I talked earlier about hey, we want to be a little bit more aggressive about how we estimate what our revenue intake is going to be. If we don't hit that, we have a fallback that will cover that. So yes, that is absolutely part of the strategy. It's one of those things like, if you're waiting for a rainy day, it's a rainy day, right? This is our moment.
Even though it's sunny. Yay.
Yeah, it's bright up here.
It's
Holy
bright and
smokes.
sunny. Okay,
Blinding.
I think we're up to Miss Priya.
All right. So we know that the dissolution of the Culture and Talent Development Department was a cost savings decision. And so my question is, what concrete plans are in place to ensure that our district not only remains compliant with Senate Bill 5227 and the requirements to train employees regarding DEI/AR training, but to advance a culture of equity and belonging across our district in alignment with the colleges?
Okay, so I pre-read Priya's question, so I knew what I was getting into. But I have a variety of answers for that. First and foremost, we did announce previously that the Culture and Talent Office that it created in the first year, or right at the end of the first year when I was in this position, is something we're going to move back into human resources. The concept at the outset of that was, I think there's probably two important things for me. One is to emphasize and show the importance of culture and talent development here at our organization. And I thought that moving it to its own separate area would not only put an emphasis on that, but would also change and help with the workload in human resources. It did in some ways, but I think caused more kind of clunky problems than I envisioned. And so, as I promised, I'm changing it. I'm moving it back. And so that doesn't change my focus and commitment to the culture and talent development here. It just wasn't working quite the way I had envisioned it. So the concrete plans are really basically the part of the transition where Dr. Jim Moore and Fred Davis are working together with their teams on the transition of how that will roll back in, how we'll use those individuals, and how we'll continue the work. And then you talked about the training. Can you say that part again?
Yeah, Senate Bill 5227 mandates that we provide DEI, AR, diversity, equity, inclusion, anti-racism training
Yep.
for our faculty and staff. And it has percentages in there as well. And so CTD really led that charge.
Yeah.
And I understand now it's going back to HR, and I'm just going off of what information we have of when that was HR's responsibility,
Yeah.
and the reason why CTD was created. So like, I'm just curious, how is HR now being positioned to have the capacity to do great work in that area and not have chequity type things happening?
Chequity. So the way to answer that question is the expectation is still the same. As it rolls back into HR, the expectation of, matching the requirements of 5227, it still remain. And frankly, there's different people in HR than when we made the original adjustment. And so what you're going to see is a different approach to it. And I'm confident that the people that were in culture and talent development who are moving over there are going to carry that forward. I just think it's going to be a smoother operation. So it doesn't and I think it's important. I think it's important. And for me to kind of address the DEI question, I think everybody knows that we did receive a Dear Colleague letter a couple months ago. Yeah, February, that talked about the use of DEI and those initiatives. And really what it said was, if you are doing DEI work that excludes a person or a group, that's in violation of the Civil Rights Act and consequently not allowable. But basically was implied that any use of DEI was not allowed. Well, we are in a really weird situation in the state of Washington where we have things like 5227, 5194, which are state legislatively mandated work that we're asked to do, which if you look at it on the surface or from 3,000 miles away, you're going to see the terms DEI on there. Well, here's what I would say about it. Number one, first and foremost, I dare anyone to come on this campus and tell us that we're violating the Civil Rights Act. Like, we're not. We don't exclude anybody from anything. We're an open access institution, and we support everybody on the way through. Anybody who wants to come here and learn is going to get a chance, right? And that's the essence of what we do. The terminology and the way it's being characterized in different forums implies that if you are doing equity work, you are doing something way over here that's, I don't think, kind of in line with what we do. And whether that's right or wrong, we know that the work we do is not in violation of the Civil Rights Act, is in line with what the state legislature and state government have required us to do, and the things that we're doing. I just talked about, federal legislation. We're also going to follow that and try to get ourselves in a space where we can meet all those different requirements. And frankly, and then go right back to the beginning, which is every student who walks in our door needs the opportunity to walk across the stage. So use whatever words you want for it. We are trying to do the best we can for every single person who walks in here. And so I'm supportive of it and want us to continue to do that kind of work. I just think we're in a kind of we are in a little bit of a different spot than some other states are, but that's our challenge, and that's our responsibility to handle that stuff. And I will tell you, I had this conversation with Congressman Baumgartner before he left for DC, and explained that situation to him and said, look, we just need space to operate in between these two things. And I think it's not fair or ethical for the college campus to be a battleground between two differing political philosophies, period.
Okay, so we are just about out of time. So is there anything we didn't cover that you want us to know?
I think I mentioned it earlier, but I'm going to say it again. Communicating everything that goes across our desks in a day is impossible. Like, I really look forward to the town hall so I can run through a 17-page email in an hour of talking. But I need you to understand that sometimes when we get things that hit the media that are kind of hot items and you don't hear from us, it's because we're totally underwater trying to advocate and do the right things to put us in the right position going forward. And so silence is not an indication of passivity. Silence for us is an indication that we have our heads down and we're working like crazy to solve the problems that you should never have to see. Right? Like, that's kind of our job. And it is a huge challenge at this point, both at a federal, state, and local level to keep our organization strong and a great part of our community. But I mean, I'm actually, this is going to sound so dumb after an hour of talking about the things that are challenging for us. Like, I am super optimistic about what the next couple of years are going to bring, because I think it'll bring us opportunities to be better than everybody else. So, and that's ultimately what I want, is for us to be better than everybody else. So hang in there, watch what we're doing. Please be innovative and aggressive about what you do. I just think we have the right people in place, and it's going to be an interesting ride for the next couple of years.
Okay, thank you. So our next town hall, the last one of the year, is on May 28th at 1 o'clock at SFCC's Music Auditorium. So hopefully you can join us then. Thank you.